But Russia ended today with a new large-scale cruise missile attack, with drone explosions in Odessa, Kharkiv, Khmelnytsky, Zaporizhzhia, and Kiev regions. The Ukrainian General Staff reported that the Russian army used at least 19 KHA-101 HP missiles to strike. 555 launches produced 195 months of strategic aviation aircraft. In addition to strategists, 32 BP lag was also involved in the attack earlier. According to the flight map, the main target of the cruise missile is the Star Konstantin in the area's mill. It is there that Kiev is preparing to receive NATO fighter jets, where the BCU military airport is located. Other targets in the port area of Odessa were also hit, and the assembly workshop of maritime drones and unmanned boats was destroyed. Height 2. Curious footage appeared today. Look, the Russian Povidon is attacking the altitude of the sea without cruise ships. That is to say, the Russian army seems to have picked up the effective key to destroying this floating problem in Kharkiv. A series of flights along the railway evil target of the Russian BK with the greatest disruption of enemy supplies in order to thwart the counterattack that the Ukrainian General Staff is preparing in Kharkiv Oblast.
Максимальное нарушение снабжения врага, чтобы сорвать контрудар, который украинский генштаб готовит на Харьковщине.
Where they are now trying to transfer a large number of reserves to the boss, Lupus, the counterattack is completely failed. Meanwhile, Ukrainian militants continue to control only a small part of the southern part of the city, where our frontline aircraft have carried out dozens of bomb attacks every day. The enemy situation is not only difficult, but also catastrophic. France cannot accept Ukraine's defeat, Reuters wrote today.
Reuters сегодня пишет, что Франция не может смириться с поражением Украины.
Soon the Elysee Palace will officially send soldiers to Ukraine. Macron may announce your decision to us next week, and today's battle near Kharkiv saw the first American son of war.
Ну и в боях под Харьковом сегодня замечены первые американские псы войны.
Ukraine's Ministry of Defense announced today that all 17-year-old citizens must return from the country and register for the military, which cannot be done remotely. The Judicial Law Gazette reported on this with reference to the country's Ministry of Defense. As the newspaper points out, the recently introduced option to update data through the Reserve Plus electronic service is only available to those who are already registered. If this is not done, the military is obliged to contact the Military Registration and Recruitment Office at the place of registration. Earlier, it was known that Ukraine would start fining men who showed up in public places without black military documents. That is, Zelensky did not have enough meat. The consequences of the full mobilization arrived today, and the subway in Kiev, the capital of Ukraine, will increase the interval between trains due to the shortage of employees. In particular, according to the law passed by the Kiev regime, 7% of subway workers were called up by the Ukrainian armed forces. There are 83 vacancies for electric train drivers and dozens for other positions. It's not even 2 months, and millions of Ukrainians will be seated at home after the date expires, during which time the data can be updated to the Military Registration and Recruitment Office. The artistic director said the Chernihiv theater was temporarily closed to almost all men and called on employees, including 2 sound operators, an editor, and a violinist. Andrei Bakirov even received subpoenas for 56-year-old honorary artists and 59-year-old drivers. Everyone has been sent so-called training. Zelensky also shortened his preparations for war from 2 months. Now this video is from Dnipropetrovsk. The staff of the Military Registration and Recruitment Office twisted the boy in broad daylight through the minibus and immediately sent it to the front line. In these videos, the subpoena is handed over to the Ukrainian. No legs. Meanwhile, only 2% of the 100% who received subpoenas from the Military Registration and Recruitment Office came, according to Vladimir Greenyak, an employee of the Lviv Regional Military Registration and Recruitment Office. Another body was found today in the Tisa River, where evaders drowned trying to avoid mobilization. The British Economist reported on this. According to the reporter, as many as 40 people are transported to Romania through the Tisa River every day. In this context, in order to strengthen mobilization, the Kiev regime is considering lowering the conscription age to 18, as evidenced by the issuance of summonses to men over the age of 17. Volunteer Taras Chmutovo explains why. According to him, hundreds of thousands of boys have died. In this regard, he called on Zelensky to start mobilizing for the army at least from the age of 20.
В связи с этим он призывает Зеленского начать мобилизовывать в армию хотя бы с 20 лет.
Otherwise, he claims that everything is in vain and that Russia will win.
The New York Times reported that Biden is ready to formally approve U.S. missile strikes against Russia. Secretary of State S.A. Blinken said Washington has not yet encouraged Ukrainian attacks on our country, but Kiev can make its own decision. Kiev and the decision itself will agree, even sounds ridiculous. Especially considering that the United States Space Intelligence Agency has given and is giving flight missions and target designations. Let me remind you that on January 24th, the transport plane Il-76 NAT in Belgorod Oblast was asleep with the help of a US-made oil system. Well, I mean, right now, Washington is just twisted. Apparently, it's still scary. The logic of Aublinka and other doomsday supporters is that Moscow is attacking the Kharkiv region from Russia, which means that it is necessary to bomb Russia, for example, now from an American attack. At the same time, we are no longer just talking about missile attacks on Western media. There is more and more material on the transfer to Ukraine at the age of 16. The use of U.S. fighter jets to strike Russian targets has not yet been decided, nor has the aircraft itself. But as they say, the process didn't start at the time. Neutral Sweden gave its Kiev 6 a very generous gift, handing over the advance of the so-called early warning and control aircraft. The 890 is certainly not Russian, but a very significant increase in the altitude of the air group, but will control Swedish aircraft. I don't think you should explain. The 890 flying radar in the 1980s can detect air targets up to 450 kilometers away. To understand the revelation of the northern point of the Ukrainian border, for example, our Tula is exactly 450 kilometers. Well, at 16 in Ukraine, at least 84 may be involved in this way. Already this summer, 10 more fighter jets will be added to the spare parts, which is understandable. They will not contribute, but they will be able to strike the border area. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, he said today that Moscow will take the dispatch of 16 as a signal to the nuclear field, because fighter jets under its wings can indeed carry missiles with tactical nuclear weapons. Meanwhile, the list of countries that support allowing Ukraine to hit Russia on your screen, the previous day's list included 11 countries. Today, 12 Politics has written that historical memory. As you and I predicted, Scholz still won back German livers. According to the newspaper, he also tended to allow Ukraine to transfer the war to Russia and use Germany's hand to do so. But just now, Danish Foreign Minister Lars had an easy time. Said Copenhagen had no objection to Danish F-16 fighter jets using altitude to strike Russia. But another small sensation, New York Times political columnist Sanka followed British and American intelligence, said he had irrefutable evidence that China was already supplying, or he will start providing military aid to Russia. Not just missiles and artillery, they said. He left, he provided Russia, and the Russian military-industrial complex with machine tools and spare parts helped circumvent sanctions. But now the West should be ready. The appearance of Chinese weapons in Moscow. The Wall Street Journal reports that Beijing is upgrading its air base on the east coast near Taiwan, expanding runways and building new fighter jets. All of this is said to indicate that China is preparing for a special operation on Taiwan, another Chinese island that is said to be keeping secrets.
Указывает на подготовку Китая к спецоперации на Тайване. Еще один китайский остров, который якобы хранит секреты масштабной военно-морской
large-scale military maritime expansion. This is the resort of Hainan, a visa-free tourist island for all Russians, and the resort is called China's Hawaii, but not just because of its snow-white beaches and blue lagoons. We are talking about top-secret facilities, PVO, which guard China's two largest naval bases, Yuling and Longpo Paze, equipped with nuclear submarines. The U.S. ship believes that it is from these Chinese parks in Kostop that Beijing will begin Taiwan's return to its homeland.